articulating what their contribution is. So I put that down to 3 C's, which is collaboration, challenge, and contribution. Those are the ways I think that can really help to increase people's engagement when they go through transformation. So, yeah, interesting question. I think my leadership style started with probably a dictatorship, where I worked out that, people would do what you ask them to do when you get given leadership role. And this is very young, when I was 12 or 13 and I was in the Air Cadets. And, I sort of had my train set to play with. And then you obviously work out that that's not really what leadership is. But I think you sort of have to, I'd certainly had to work that out by practicing it and getting it wrong and realizing that people don't really respond to that. So I think now it's gone much more into influence and much more stepping back and creating the conditions. I think to start with, you feel like you have to have all the answers and be very directive, and I think there's a time and a place for that. But also, as I've sort of matured and learnt more about it, I've learnt that actually sometimes it's just about creating the space for people to find their own answers and having the confidence that that's also leadership. So I think one of my superpowers, is unitasking, or one of the things that I think is a leadership superpower is unitasking, which is what it sounds like. It's the opposite of multitasking. And I think that's so important in today's world where we're on all the time. We are able to be contacted through a variety of different, media sources. So it's very easy to think that we have to be everywhere at once, but actually the brain still can't be in more than one place at once. Our conscious thinking brain can only really focus on one thing at a time. And I think I sort of discovered this, it's a very long convoluted story, which I give a whole speech about, but ultimately I discovered that when you focus on one thing at a time, not only do you do that task quicker, but you reduce overwhelm and you take back a bit of agency in your life. So it feels good. So actually, I think giving yourself permission to focus on one thing at a time is a really, really good strategy for well-being. And I think one of the best ways for leaders to encourage that is to do it themselves and to signpost that and say, actually, I can't multitask. I'm better at focusing on one thing at a time. So I need to focus on this right now. And actually sort of creating those boundaries, but also socializing the ideas so that other people think, maybe I could do that too, because they seem so calm and I'm running around doing a million things. Hopefully that's not true. But I think you've got to practice what you preach. So that's a great question. And a lot of organizations ask about this, how do we lead through transformation? How do we lead through change? I think there's a couple of really important things to think about here. Number one is, if you, let's just say your partner, or someone that you deeply respect, put a cup of tea in your hand and they said, we need to talk, something's got to change. What would your immediate go-to thought be? Because I know what I'd be thinking. I'd be thinking, oh my goodness, what have I done wrong? So I think it's important to recognize that when we're leading through change, that's where people's brains go. They either think I must have done something wrong or I'm being set up to fail in the past. So actually, I think a lot of it is about teaching people to have a different mindset about failure, because it's part of the journey. I think that's one part. I think the other part is when change is done too, we don't really like being told what to do. And I did 21 years in the military where you literally tell people what to do. And I can tell you that they still don't like it. So I think the key is creating a sense of agency. So where you can, giving people the ability to collaborate, to co-create the transformation plan. And if they can't do that, then the ability to challenge it. And if they can't do that, then at the very least, explaining why they are an integral part of the plan and articulating what their contribution is. So I put that down to 3 C's, which is collaboration, challenge, and contribution. Those are the ways I think that can really help to increase people's engagement when they go through transformation. So I attribute a lot of this down to my upbringing, my childhood, It did all start with the movie Top Gun. I'm not ashamed to say, when I watched the film and I thought, that is what I'm going to do. And as you are when you're 12, you don't question it. But neither did anybody else, actually. You know, my parents, my teachers, they said, absolutely, we can kind of see you being a fighter pilot. So I went off and joined the Air Cadets, and that gives you an early exposure to leadership. And then I was, prefect at school. So I think part of it was just that nobody put the idea in my head that I couldn't. And actually, when you're sort of that kind of age, we don't have those limiting beliefs that we all learn to have when we get older. So I think that helped. And also just getting out there and doing it. Inevitably, you have to test and adjust, you get some things wrong. But the more you do it, the less frightening something is. So I think early exposure and then just keeping learning, I think that really helped. Yes. So with difficulty at times, I think one of the lessons I learnt early on when I was in the Air Force was not to try and hide it. I think when I went back to work after maternity, I was afraid that if I kind of signposted that I was doing childcare, that it would be a black mark. And actually, I was being deployed to America on an exercise, and I wasn't able to kind of work out the childcare plan because my husband at the time was also deployed somewhere. He was in the army, and I kept trying to come up with these elaborate reasons as, oh, I've got to get back because it's a really important meeting and X, Y, Z, and nobody was buying it. And eventually I said, look, if I don't get back, my son won't have anyone at home. And I remember them saying, why didn't you just say that in the first place, Sarah? And they got me on the next flight. So I think it was learning not to be afraid of just being really transparent, because a lot of people are parents too. So I think that was a really important lesson. But also, dare I say it, sometimes as a mother, we used to say, oh, well, it always falls to the mum. But that's often also because I always just got on and did it. But actually, when you kind of say, hey, he's got two parents, so maybe, dad can help out, and you ask them, they usually find a way. So I think it was also about not being a martyr, whether we realize it or not, and actually, letting the other part of the team help out.